The sound of rain drummed softly on the terminal roof like a forgotten melody. Puddles reflected the cold light of the digital signs, while people rushed through the station, indifferent to the stories colliding all around them. Emily Carter was just another face in the crowd, but that day she was about to stop being invisible. With fair skin, blue eyes, and loosely tied, light blonde hair, Emily looked younger than her 29 years could carry. She worked at a small coffee stand beside Platform 3, wearing a worn beige sweater and faded jeans. But her eyes held a quiet light, a mix of exhaustion and a tenderness that refused to die. Across the hall, a man was trying to blend in. He failed. Nathan Reed, 35, wore a crisp white shirt under a navy blazer. His short, tousled brown hair and deep brown eyes gave him the appearance of composure, but he was unraveling inside, outwardly elegant, inwardly wrecked. He had abandoned his world a week earlier, a corporate empire left behind with the same coldness that had come with betrayal. Nathan was there on impulse. He had jumped on the first train, got off at a random stop, and realized he had no cash. His pride? Still fully intact, and the bus he needed required something he no longer had. Change. No fare, no ride, man. You think this is a charity? The driver snapped, holding the door open. Nathan didn't respond. He stared at the ground, torn between begging and backing away. That's when Emily appeared. She had noticed him from a distance, not because of his clothes, but because of the way he stood, the stillness, the heaviness, like someone who had lost something, but hadn't figured out what. Without thinking, she crossed the hallway, pulled a few crumpled bills from her small wallet, and handed them to the driver. "I'll pay for him." Nathan looked up. There was an abyss between them. He, a fallen magnate in emotional exile. She, a humble worker carrying more than her share of weight. And yet, in that instant, they stood on the same ground. "You didn't have to do that," he said, voice low and rough. "Maybe not, but maybe one day someone will do the same for me. Until then, I'll keep trying to balance the world." The driver huffed, took the money, and opened the door. Nathan boarded without looking back. Emily let out a breath and returned to the coffee stand. The gesture hadn't hurt her wallet much, but it left a strange echo in her chest. She thought that would be it. 3 days later. Emily had just finished her morning shift when a light drizzle began to fall again. She grabbed her bag, tied her hair with a fraying elastic, and headed to the cafe down the street. She sat by the window, ordered a hot chocolate, and rested her face in her hands. A shadow stopped beside her. "Don't you always help strangers, or just the ones who look ready to fall apart?" She looked up slowly. It was him, cleaner now, shaved, but with the same heavy gaze, that same quiet presence, filled with unspoken things. The guy from the bus. Nathan Reed. He extended his hand with hesitation. She shook it, surprised by the firm gentleness of his grip. "How did you find me?" "You left your name on the order slip. And this is the only decent coffee spot within 3 miles. Emily raised an eyebrow. "So you followed me for the coffee?" "Partly, and for a bus ticket that turned out to be the best investment I've made in years." Silence. She didn't know what to say, neither did he, so they sat, watching the rain, breathing the same quiet. That night, when Emily got home, she found a folded piece of paper tucked into the book she carried in her backpack. No name. Just a single line in confident handwriting. "Not every rescue needs sirens, Nace." She read it 3 times, then closed her eyes. Outside, the rain grew heavier, but inside her something softened. Nathan returned to the cafe over the following days. Sometimes for a drink, sometimes just to ask about Lily, Emily's younger sister, whom she had spoken of with warmth and worry. He listened like he was hearing symphonies. He didn't pry, but he never rushed the silence either. Emily began to wait for him. His face showed up in her thoughts more than she'd admit. That scared her. Men came and went, and when they left, they took pieces of her. She didn't want to break again, but Nathan didn't seem to want anything, and maybe that's why she started wanting him to. One chilly afternoon, he arrived soaked. "What would you do if you had all the money in the world, but no peace?" he asked, watching the grey sky through the window. Emily thought for a moment. "I'd trade half for a hug that meant something, the other half for someone who stays after knowing the real me." Nathan closed his eyes, as if something inside him had just been translated. "Are you always like this?" "Like what?" "Raw, real, almost dangerous." "I don't know how to lie or hide. Life already does that for me." She didn't know that Nathan had sold part of his company, that he was hiding from headlines and corporate meetings. He had vanished to find something real, and when he got lost at that bus terminal, he found someone who saw beyond the facade. He didn't know that Emily sold baked goods at night to pay for her sister's medicine, that she never finished college, that she carried a library of feelings inside her that no one checked out. And in that world of hot drinks, soft rains, and lingering looks, two very different lives began orbiting around a single thing: shared vulnerability. At the end of that week, Nathan didn't show up. No texts, no notes. Emily tried not to care, but she felt it. The next morning, opening the register at the coffee stand, she found an envelope. Inside, the bus ticket she had paid for, now laminated, and a new line. "If one day you need a ride, you know where to find me. N." She closed her eyes, hugged the envelope to her chest, and knew that wasn't a goodbye. It was just the beginning. Nathan Reed walked slowly through the narrow streets of the old neighborhood, where power lines cut the sky like electric scars and the scent of fresh bread spilled from nearby bakeries. He wore dark jeans and a simple rolled-up shirt, a disguise that to him still felt like freedom. The last time someone had touched him without wanting something in return, he couldn't remember, until Emily Carter appeared like a quiet thunderstorm. One gesture from her, simple, impulsive, honest, had broken something open inside him, and now he needed to understand why. But there was something about that moment he couldn't shake. Emily never asked his name, never questioned why he was there. She just helped. And somehow that undid him more than any confession ever could. Emily, meanwhile, was unsettled. Since that second encounter, Nathan had been appearing regularly at the cafe, sometimes just to order tea, sometimes with a book in hand, staying for an hour reading in silence. He didn't ask too many questions, he didn't shower her with flattery, but his presence, solid, steady, pushed her to lower her guard, and that terrified her. Emily was tired of opening doors just to watch people leave. Her mother had done that when Emily was a child. A kiss on the forehead and a hollow promise. "I'll be back soon." The silence that followed became the loudest sound of her life. Since then, Emily had developed a strange intuition. She could always tell when someone was getting ready to leave. And Nathan, he had that scent of unfinished business, of someone just passing through. And yet, she wanted him to stay. That Saturday afternoon, Nathan showed up at the stand with a paper bag. "Didn't bring coffee, but I brought this," he said, placing the bag on the counter. Emily raised a brow. "You know customers are supposed to buy, not bring things." "Sure, sis, open it, go on." She hesitated, then smiled. Inside was a worn hardcover copy of Wuthering Heights, the same edition she used to borrow from the school library before her life had unraveled. Emily froze. "How did you know?" "You mentioned it once, very quickly. I didn't even notice until I reread the quotes you knew by heart. I thought, maybe you deserved to hold it again." She gripped the book tightly, eyes brimming. "Chaz, no one's ever cared enough to remember what I love." Nathan stepped closer slowly. He didn't touch her. He let the silence do the holding. "Maybe no one's ever really listened. I did." From that day on, something shifted. They began meeting outside the cafe, first in parks, then in quiet bookstores tucked between alleyways. They talked about everything, and sometimes about nothing, but what they shared most was what neither of them could say. One of those silences happened during a walk through a wooded park. Emily, her blonde hair loose and floating in the breeze, sat on a worn bench and stared at the pale sky. You ever feel like some people come into your life just to mess it up, then somehow leave you better? Nathan studied her, then replied after a moment. I think some people come in and stay, even if they don't know how. She smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Shiosai, are you running from something, Nathan? He hesitated, then quietly answered, From myself. That night, Emily opened a journal she hadn't touched in years. Today, he heard me again, and the strangest thing is, I didn't say a word. How can someone see so much so quickly? And why now, when I was finally learning not to need anyone? Days later, Nathan began showing up at the children's shelter where Emily volunteered on Sundays. She hadn't invited him. He just appeared, painting walls, sorting books, listening to stories. He never made a show of it. He didn't need to be noticed. One of the kids, curly-haired and sharp-tongued, pointed at Emily and whispered, Is he your boyfriend? Emily turned red. No, just a friend. But he looks at you like my dad looks at my mom when she's asleep on the couch, like, careful. Emily laughed, but something deep inside her shifted. Because it was true, Nathan's care was quiet but undeniable. Later that day, as they rinsed paintbrushes by the outdoor sink, Emily turned to him. Why are you really here, Nathan? He paused, then for the first time spoke without his usual filters. Because I've spent my whole life surrounded by people who wanted what I could give them, you were the first person who gave me something when I had nothing. And now I just want to give something back, not things. Just presence. She didn't reply. She just handed him the clean brush, her fingers brushing his, their eyes locked for just a little too long. The following week, Nathan didn't show. Emily didn't want to admit it, but she felt the absence like a missing rhythm. The cafe felt colder, the books quieter. Even Lily noticed. Where's the guy with the small smile? She asked. Emily didn't answer. On Friday night, as she unpacked a book from her bag, she found an envelope. Inside was a ticket to an art exhibit and a handwritten note. I want to show you a piece of my world, but only if you want to walk into it. N. On Saturday, she went. The space was modest, hanging yellow lights, old hardwood floors, and quiet chatter. On the walls, black and white photographs of children, elderly faces, workers in motion. And then, one color photo. Emily, standing at the bus stop, from behind. Hair in a loose bun, book in hand. Nathan had taken it weeks before. She hadn't noticed. That's how I see you, a whole story in one frame. She looked at him, and in that moment, she realized she was afraid. Afraid because it felt real. Afraid because it could work. Afraid because maybe, just maybe, she deserved it. But more than fear, she wanted to continue, to discover, to be brave. Are you still running from yourself, Nathan? She asked. He took a breath. No. Now, I think I'm trying to come back. And maybe you're the way back. The city breathed slowly under a cloudy morning sky. A certain stillness seemed to hush everything. But inside Emily Carter, a storm raged. She had woken before her alarm. As usual, she tied her key light blonde hair into a soft bun, slipped on her favorite un beige sweater, and looked into the mirror like she was facing someone she used to know. Her routine hadn't changed, not in time, but in rhythm. Ever since Nathan Reed stepped into her life with that sober gaze and quiet intensity, time had felt different. It wasn't just attraction, it was emotional danger disguised as calm. And it stirred something in her she wasn't sure she could handle. That afternoon, Nathan showed up at the children's shelter, wearing his usual style, a white shirt with rolled-up sleeves, navy blazer slung over his shoulder, his short, tousled brown hair damp from sweat and rain. He had spent the morning helping unload donation boxes. Emily watched from a distance. There was something in the way he spoke to the children, gentle, unpretentious, that made her want to know him more, and also run. She walked over carefully. "Do you always show up wherever I happen to be?" Nathan smiled with his eyes. "Maybe I'm just walking the same road. You just happen to start ahead of me." Emily crossed her arms. Strands of her hair danced in the breeze. Her far blue eyes' grey-merk were soft but alert. "You never talk about what you left behind." He paused just a moment. "Because if I look back too much, I might return, and I don't want to. Not to the money, not to the mask." She studied him for a beat. "So where do you want to go?" Nathan looked at her the way someone looks at a truth they never dared say aloud. "Where I don't have to hide, where someone knows me and stays anyway." To ask him, that same day they walked side by side through a wooded trail near the shelter, the sound of leaves underfoot, the scent of damp earth, and the filtered sunlight through the trees painted a scene right out of a film. But what they carried inside was not light. Emily sat on an old wooden bench. "You know what scares me the most?" she asked, holding the rusted ring her mother had once left behind, now worn around her neck. "The idea that what I'm feeling now might not last, that it's just a moment of magic, and then everything goes back to being empty." Nathan sat beside her. He didn't touch her, didn't deny her fear. He knew emptiness. He knew it by name. But with her, the world had started to make sense again. "I feel that too, like everything could disappear in a blink, but when you show up, I remember how to breathe again." Emily glanced sideways, eyes glistening. "What did they do to you, Nathan?" He lowered his gaze. His hands clenched the bench. "They taught me to distrust. I grew up surrounded by people who said they loved me, while counting the zeros in my bank account. And when I really needed someone, no one stayed. Only contracts, only lies, only silence." "And now?" she asked gently. "Now, there's you. And that scares me more than anything, because with you, I have nowhere to hide." Toys time, the next day Nathan came with an offer. They'd paint the new reading room at the shelter together. Emily agreed. The idea of building something real, with their hands, not just words, felt like therapy. They worked side by side for hours, laughed, got paint on their clothes. He had draped his blazer on a chair. She had splashes of color on her cheeks. For the first time in a long time, they seemed at ease in their own skin. At one point, Nathan reached out to wipe a stain from her face. His fingers brushed her skin. Time paused. "Emily." "Don't say it," she whispered. "Just stay." And then it happened. The kiss. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't hesitant. It felt inevitable, like something that had always existed and was just waiting for space to be real. Right there, they crossed the line between possible and undeniable. That night, Emily lay awake, heart pounding. It wasn't excitement, it was fear. Fear that Nathan would find out everything she was hiding. Fear that it was too good to last. Fear that deep down she still believed she didn't deserve to be chosen. Nathan, alone in his small rented apartment, held the laminated bus ticket she had once paid for. He'd kept it with him since day one, and alone he whispered, "If this isn't the beginning of love, then what else could it be?" 2 days later, Emily missed work. Lily had a fever. Emily spent the night doing compresses, calculating if she had enough for medicine and rent. Her chest tightened under the weight of it all. The next morning, when she opened the door for the newspaper, she found a bag. Inside, herbal tea, fever meds, fresh fruit, and a note. This isn't a miracle, but it's care. And I'm learning that love might just be that. N. She cried, alone, with her forehead resting on the door. Because no one had ever cared for her like that, unasked, unjudged, and unwavering. That Sunday, Nathan returned to the shelter. This time he brought books from a publishing friend. He said nothing. Let the kids celebrate. Emily watched from the hallway. Their eyes met. And in that look, something had shifted. Vulnerability, openness, a desire to stay. She walked over. He gave her a small smile. You didn't have to do all this. I didn't do it out of duty. I did it because I want to stay. She inhaled slowly. Then stay. But if you're going to leave, tell me first. I've lost too many people without warning. I won't promise forever, but I can promise presence for as long as we can hold on. And in that moment, with no music, no spotlight, and no guaranteed happy ending, something changed. Emily was no longer just the girl from the coffee stand. Nathan was no longer the man running from himself. Now they were two people, trying to believe they could be loved exactly as they were. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Things between Emily and Nathan had changed. Not lighter, just more real. They'd moved beyond the initial spark. Now came the quiet questions, the sharp silences, the heartbeats that spoke not of anticipation, but of uncertainty. Nathan stopped by the cafe almost daily, sometimes to help, sometimes just to sit near her. It felt like they were trying to build something safe between two broken pasts. But inside Emily, a shadow was growing. She knew exactly what it was. Guilt. That week, Nathan was invited to a charity event hosted by former corporate partners. He hesitated but eventually agreed, thought he was strong enough to face his old life without getting lost in it. The venue was modern, filled with hanging glass lights and floral arrangements. Along one wall was a gallery-style exhibit called Youth in Recovery. He walked through the panels, reading stories, studying faces. Then he froze in front of one black and white photo. The face was younger, the eyes more guarded, but there was no mistaking it. Emily. Next to the photo was a short caption. Emily Carter, 18 years old, detained for attempted theft from a pharmacy, released due to lack of evidence. Nathan couldn't move. The display had been submitted by a non-profit. He knew it was part of her past, but why hadn't she told him? The next day he didn't show up at the cafe, or the shelter. Emily felt the absence like a hole she couldn't cover. Later that evening, her phone lit up. Can we talk? Tonight. N. They met at a quiet park. The wind moved slowly through the trees, rustling like whispers. Emily already knew what this was. Nathan stood, hands in his pockets, eyes unreadable, not angry, but hurt. Mike, why didn't you tell me, Emily? She didn't pretend, didn't deflect. Because I was afraid you'd only see that part of me, that everything we've built would collapse over something that happened on one of the worst nights of my life. He said nothing. She kept going. I was 18. Lily had a fever. We had no money. I worked in a diner and barely made enough for rent. The pharmacy wouldn't take expired insurance. I panicked. I tried to sneak out with a bottle of cough syrup. They caught me. I was sobbing, holding a ripped prescription. They let me go. But the shame, that stuck. Nathan bit his lip. His expression was torn between empathy and pain. You had so many chances to tell me. Why silence? Because for once I wanted to be the girl you met on the bus, the one who helped, who smiled, not the girl who almost got arrested. He lowered his head. So did I make you feel like you had to hide that? She hesitated, swallowed. No, but I was the one who believed I couldn't be fully known, and still loved. They sat in silence for a long time. The night felt colder than usual. Nathan eventually walked to a bench and sat down. Emily stood unsure if she should leave. He nodded toward the space beside him. She sat. "I don't want to lose you, but I need to say this. This hit something deep. I've been lied to before, betrayed. Silence terrifies me." "I understand. I'm not asking you to trust me immediately. I'm asking you to remember who I've been with you. That's also part of me." That night, Emily returned home quietly. She removed the necklace her mother had left her and set it on the dresser. She felt lighter, but also afraid. Afraid she might have lost something. Real. Nathan sat alone, staring at the laminated bus ticket on the table. He still carried it. It was the only thing from that day that hadn't faded, and he remembered what she told him weeks earlier. Sometimes we do for others what no one did for us. Maybe now it was his turn. In the days that followed, they didn't see each other. Emily picked up a pencil and started sketching again. She drew a park bench, the cafe, the shelter, the medicine bag on her doorstep, and finally, she drew something that didn't exist yet. Two people hand in hand, standing in front of a community center with a plaque on the wall. At the end of that week, an envelope appeared beneath her door. Inside, a drawing. It showed the laminated bus ticket and a small heart next to it. On the back, in familiar handwriting, "The truth hurts, but yours was whole. I'm still here. N." The next morning, she walked into the cafe and saw him, sitting at their usual table. A cup in front of him, an empty seat beside it. She sat. They looked at each other. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't a full restart. It was presence. It was, "I still want this." Nathan spoke first. "Do you want to build a place with me? One where no one has to hide who they are?" She smiled. "Yes, but only if it has paint, running kids, and a really big couch. Because sometimes, all we need is somewhere soft to land when life gets too loud." He laughed, and in that laugh there was relief. The spring wind blew softly that morning, swaying the white sheets hanging in the courtyard of the children's shelter like quiet flags of peace. Emily sat on a wooden step, a pencil in her fingers and her heart, holding its breath. It had been nearly a month since that talk in the park, since the "I'm still here." Since the day she finally allowed herself to be fully seen with all her scars and wasn't rejected. Nathan came every day. No grand promises, no declarations, just presence. Sometimes quiet, sometimes with books in his hands, sometimes with that look, the one that spoke what his voice never quite could. But this morning, he seemed different, nervous. He wore his usual white shirt with sleeves rolled, navy blazer over his arm, his short brown hair slightly messy, his deep brown eyes flickering, like he was about to do something he'd rehearsed 100 times in silence. "Choice your start writers, come with me," he asked, holding out his hand. Emily didn't ask where, she just nodded. They walked in silence for 15 minutes through old streets until they arrived at an abandoned warehouse near downtown. The building had been cleaned, painted, and newly planted flowers lined the front. Emily blinked, confused. "What is this?" Nathan gave a nervous smile, like someone bracing for a fall or a flight. "Come in." She stepped through the door. The first thing she noticed was a sunlit hall with stained glass windows. In the center, a table stacked with children's books, beanbags scattered nearby. Further in, a small kitchen space, and on the main wall, a plaque, simple, with bold lettering. Emily Carter Center, for those who believed, even when everything said not to. Emily stopped. The air left her lungs. Her eyes filled before she even realized. "You named this after me?" Nathan stepped closer. "Sigh, because you're the one who showed me what it means to love honestly. You taught me that sometimes starting over is the bravest thing we can do." She shook her head, tears falling. "Nathan, I don't deserve all this. You deserve more, but for now, let's start here." Silence. He handed her an envelope. "These are the papers. The center is yours, with or without me. I wanted to give you something no one could ever take away. Not the past, not fear, not even me." With trembling hands, she opened the envelope. Inside was the signed deed. The building now legally belonged to her. She dropped to her knees and cried. Nathan knelt beside her, didn't say a word, just stayed, present. Again. That night, they returned to the shelter and shared the news with the children. Lily jumped into Emily's arms, squealing that she was a real director now. The kids began sketching designs for rooms, art corners, music spaces. Dreams started forming, in colored pencils. Nathan stood in the back, quiet, smiling, because for the first time, he didn't need a spotlight to feel like he belonged. Days later, Emily was organizing the last shelf in the center's small library when she found a note tucked inside a book. It was his handwriting. "You bought me a bus ticket. I thought it was just a kind gesture. Now I know it was the ticket to everything my life was missing, and I found it. In you. N." She closed the book, resting her forehead against it. This was love. Not the kind in movies, but the kind that stays. The kind that doesn't run during storms. The kind that whispers, "I'm here," and means it. At the center's grand opening, children laughed, volunteers beamed, and reporters asked questions. Emily gave a shy interview, wearing her usual beige sweater and messy bun, holding Lily's hand, explaining that the place was for everyone who had ever felt invisible. Nathan watched from a distance, eyes shining. For the first time, he felt part of something that couldn't be bought, something that wouldn't end with a deal. Emily spotted him, gestured with her head. He walked toward her. She took the mic. "Lastly, I want to thank someone who showed me that real love doesn't need a stage. It just needs courage." She looked at Nathan. "You stayed, even when you had every reason to leave. And today, I'm staying too. For us, for those who will come after us, for those who still believe." They embraced, not rushed, not performative, just real, like home. Months later, the Emily Carter Center became a city reference. Emily remained humble, walking the halls with her sleeves rolled up, listening to children and holding space for their stories. Nathan continued investing in social programs, far from the corporate world. But every morning, he left a coffee mug on her desk with a different note. And every night, she placed the same laminated bus ticket out on his nightstand, a symbol of the beginning, and a reminder that the most valuable things don't cost a thing.